How often are we meant to feel anxious? So you'll often hear me refer to anxiety as a normal and healthy human emotion that all of us will feel pretty much every day of our life. But in case that's a little ambiguous, I thought what I'd do is spend 24 hours cataloguing and recording the times throughout the day that I feel anxious, paying particular attention to why I'm feeling anxious and of course how I deal with that anxiety. I'm Tim Box and I recorded how often I felt anxious so you don't have to. So welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time, I'm Tim Box. I'm a mind coach, and for the last 12 years or so, I've been working with people to help them overcome all sorts of emotional and psychological issues, and in particular, helping them get control of anxiety. Now, whilst I went through a particular phase in my life when I suffered a great deal of fairly debilitating social anxiety, see my TED Talk for details, I've never really considered myself to have, or perhaps more importantly, been told I have, any sort of anxiety disorder. Even in the most difficult times, I never used that language or that framework for what I was going through. When I see people that have been given that framework, I've noticed that their recovery is very often hindered by the mistaken idea that a healthy person doesn't experience any anxiety at all. The problem there is that if we make the target of our recovery to eradicate all traces of anxiety, then we're never going to achieve that. And to be honest, neither should we want to. Anxiety is an important emotional response, but if instead we regard it as a sign of illness or disorder, then we're always going to feel like we're in some way malfunctioning whenever we experience it. We end up getting anxious about the fact that we still feel anxious and inevitably get caught up in that feedback loop. So just to make the point about the functionality and necessity of anxiety as one of our emotional responses, I thought that for one day this week I'd pay attention to and note down every time I felt anxious. I noted how it manifested, what caused it, and ultimately how I dealt with it. And I'll be honest, the results surprised me, not least because it became very apparent very quickly how doing this was potentially making me more anxious than I otherwise would have been. And at one point, it even had me questioning my responses and wondering if I had an anxiety problem. Now I should say, you really don't have to bother doing this yourself. If you're watching this video, it might well be because you already regard anxiety as an issue, and over-analysing your own anxiety levels isn't, generally speaking, a helpful process. I'm only really doing this to illustrate a point. But with that being said, let's make our way through a day in the life of anxiety. Okay, so I've moved over to my desk for this. Not sure why, but I seem to have done that. I'm going to go through every single time I was aware of feeling anxious in a single day. So it all began 6 a.m. I kind of woke up feeling anxious. And I know why this was. It was because I had a big day ahead of me. In particular, at 10 o'clock that morning, I had an online seminar to run, which was to a lot of other hypnotherapists about my method who might want to come and train with me. So I wanted it to go well. I wanted to do well. But I very much woke up like, bing, you know, when you're like wide awake straight away thinking, oh, do I need to prepare for that? Now don't get me wrong, I think about 10 past 6 is when my alarm's due to go off, so I didn't lose any sleep about it. And I'm normally quite good for that. Even when I've got something big coming up the next day, I tend to sleep really well. And I think that's probably as a result of all the work I've done with other people about their sleep. It would be weird if some of it hadn't seeped into my own subconscious about the value of getting a good night's sleep and how worrying about stuff through the night doesn't do us any favors. So my mind it behaves itself in that respect, in that it does let me get some sleep. But I woke up feeling really like bright as a button, wanting to get going. So because it was time to get up anyway, I took action. That's how I dealt with that part of me saying, are you prepared well enough for the day? All that sort of thing. Got up, got showered, got dressed, and I went straight downstairs and started to do a little bit of work. So about 6:30, I was looking over my presentation. That was the second time I became aware of actual feelings of anxiety as I was going through the presentation that I was ready to give. Now, I'd prepped it perfectly well, but you know that thing where you just want to make sure because, hey, it's important. So that was the second time I was aware of it. About 6:45, I suddenly remembered that my plan had been to get up and do a bit of script writing for some YouTube videos. That's normally the time when I do a little bit of that. I have an hour before Britt, my other half, gets up and we go about our day. So I normally do that. And there was a bit of me thinking, oh, hang on, I'm neglecting the work that I wanted to do. So I kind of, happy that I'd prepped my presentation, shifted my focus to that. But that was really the third time I was aware, oh yeah, I need to do this instead. That was the third time anxiety caught my attention. The next time I felt anxiety, probably the strongest bit of anxiety I'd felt in the day so far, was 7 a.m. when Britt woke up and texted me from upstairs, and it was just one word, bins, in capital letters. And she sent it 3 times. She was telling me, it's dustbin day, have we taken the bins out? And anyone that's seen my TED talk, ironically, I'd forgotten to take the bins out. So I felt that, oh my God, I've got to do the bins. And I run out, and turned out I had missed the bin men. So, I was upset about that for about 2 minutes and then got on with my life. But that was literally the 4th time that day when I suddenly felt the hit of anxiety. I got ready, because Britt and I go to the gym, so I got ready for that after that. And then the next time, a different type of anxiety, 7:30, Britt came hobbling down the stairs. So she's broken a toe, is what she's done, doing her aerial hoop and aerial pole fitness, stuff like that. And I'm a little concerned, or I certainly was that day, is she doing too much? Because we were about to go to the gym. So there was concern in my mind, and I was aware that when she hobbled down the stairs, it was a concern I keep revisiting. I've been revisiting over the last 48 hours or something. I let it go. I'm not going to mollycoddle her. She knows how to look after herself. But there was definitely a bit of anxiety about that. The next time was literally 10 minutes later, as we were driving to the gym, and I was going through the day, telling Britt about it. And I know why I was doing this. It was because there was a lot of thoughts rattling round. I wasn't really present because I was thinking about all the things I've got to do that day and whether they were going to go well, had I prepared well enough. And it just helped me to say it out loud to her, even though all she's doing is going, nodding and stuff like that. But it almost makes that part of my mind feel like, yes, you're doing something about it. You're not ignoring me with these concerns. It did sort of mitigate the effects of how anxious I was feeling, and it certainly got me present in the moment anyway. Then, here's an interesting one. 8 o'clock, my old friend's social anxiety nudged me in the side of the head again. Anyone that knows my story will know I had a lot of social anxiety when I was younger at school. A small degree of bullying, but enough to distress me. But I and my TED talk, in fact, talks about me getting past the really extreme debilitating anxiety. But it's interesting, and I hadn't noticed this before. As I push the door to go into the gym, there's a little bit of that old, who's here? What are they going to think of me kind of stuff. And it wasn't huge, but I was just aware of it again. But how do you deal with that? I kind of dealt with it the way that I'd learned to deal with it, which was to remind myself that, you know what, I'm okay being me. I don't need the approval of other people. I don't need everyone to like me. And probably in these situations, it's not like I've got people that want to bully me. It's just people who probably don't give a toss about me at all. They just don't care, and that's probably a good thing. Oh, the other thing as well that I wanted to say about this, I did notice that when we were exercising in the gym, people talk about exercise being good to mitigate the effects of anxiety. When you think about it, if you've got high anxiety, which I wasn't at that time, I wasn't like in fight or flight, moving is what your mind's trying to get you to do. Take action, run, jump, fight, that sort of thing. So when you're actually doing physical exercise, you're doing something with the adrenaline that the fight or flight state is causing. So it can be pretty good. I found it good that day because when I'm at the gym, I'm not scrolling on my phone, I'm not thinking about other things, I'm just doing what I'm doing at the gym, probably concentrating on feeling knackered, to be fair. It helped because it took me out of any concerns about the day. Just for like 50 minutes, I wasn't thinking about all that stuff, I was just thinking about what I was doing there. And that was pretty cool as well. And I do enjoy, strangely enough, going to the gym just for that purpose. It sets your day off with a clearer head because you're not thinking about all the other stuff going on in your life, 8:50, we left the gym, and I don't know if you've had this thing before or you experienced this, but I had the sudden, oh yeah, I've got to do that thing today. You come back to reality, and there's that little bit of that heart racing thing going on where you suddenly remember, oh yeah, have I prepped? Have I done everything? And then you remind yourself, yeah, I have. That's what I was doing last night. That's what I was doing this morning. But there's that suddenly, right, get in the zone for what you're doing. The next hour, 9 till 10 o'clock when I got back, it wasn't high anxiety, but it was definitely heightened focus on what I was going to be doing at 10 a.m. with the presentation and just going through the presentation again. I found myself thinking about the logistics of operating Zoom, even though I do it every day with clients, but you always sort of go over it again in your mind just to be sure. The presentation itself, at 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock, it went well. And once I got into my flow, it was comfortable, but I was aware that I do still get, and always will get, and whenever I'm presenting, a little bit of the racing heart at the start of it. When you say hello to people, when you start your presentation, you want it to go well, and you want it to come across in the way that you would intend it to come across. So inevitably, there's a bit of you creating some degree of anxiety as you put your focus on that important thing for the next couple of hours, doing emails, catching up business stuff. So inevitably, you feel a certain degree of anxiety about the tasks you're performing and the information that's coming in that you've got to take action on in your business or in your life, in other aspects of it. So, but that was just kind of simmering, kind of up and down stuff. The next time I was aware of feeling anxious was about 10 to 6 in the evening, when I had a podcast to do at 6 o'clock, and the two lovely ladies doing the podcast had said, I'll send you the link 10 minutes before we start. So at 5:50, I'm thinking, have they remembered? Am I going to get that link? Have I done everything I need to do? The usual, is the start of this thing going to go okay? Are we going to do it? That kind of thing. But I felt a lot better when the email came in, only then to feel another bit of anxiety when I joined the call and I was meeting new people, and they were in America, so it was a little bit of added pressure in terms of that they'd taken their time out to interview me on their podcast, and we'd not met before. So there was all that meeting new person anxiety. Hello, social anxiety, my old friend again, you know. And then at 6:10, when they hit the record button to actually start the recording of the podcast, there was again the presentation stuff, the heart beating a bit faster, the nerves, the slightly shaky voice that I get when I get going. But then, you know, fortunately they were lovely, so it all dissipated and it was all very comfortable and it was a lovely chat. And by the way, if you follow my social media, I will be putting up a link to that podcast when it goes live in the next couple of weeks, I think. When I finished that about 7 o'clock, that was me done for the day. And you might think, okay, that's zero anxiety then. And the thing was, I was trying to get all this stuff done and finished because we were going to the cinema that evening. And I did feel the lifting of the pressure. You know, when you're like, okay, I'm done for the day now. And I did feel that even as we were kind of rushing out the door to get to the cinema. So you could argue there was a certain amount of anxiety about getting to the cinema on time to see the film, but I was aware that whatever that was definitely less than it had been during the day. At 7:30, we pulled up to the cinema and I had another sudden, oh my God, because I'm trying to learn French on Duolingo. I've got a 136-day streak, which I don't want to lose. I hadn't done my French yet that day. So we sat in the car, Brit did her Spanish, I did my French. Are you doing Duolingo at all? Are you learning a new language? It's really good, but you don't want to lose your streak, you know? Then at 8 o'clock, the final time when I felt anxious in the day, just before the movie started, I had my usual anxiety. Right, movie's gonna start. Do I need the loo? Do I need to quickly rush to the loo and make sure that I'm comfortable during the film? That sort of thing. And that, I believe, whatever score you've got on the counter there as how many times I felt anxious, those were the times I became viscerally aware of feelings of anxiety or that emotion firing up to get my attention. Okay, so there you have it, a day recording every time I was aware of feeling anxious. Although, to be fair, I wouldn't mind betting there were other times that I wasn't even aware of because they just didn't register to the same degree. Anxiety isn't just the visceral stuff we're aware of, it's also when we just suddenly remember to do something out of nowhere, or when we find our mind idly pondering an ongoing concern. There were very probably lots of times this happened during the day that went by without me even noticing. There were a couple of really interesting things I did notice from doing this exercise. Firstly, even though I talk about anxiety being a functional emotion that we're meant to feel regularly, it even surprised me how often I was experiencing it. I think this exercise taught me how often and how quickly our emotions shift as we go through the day. Secondly, this exercise just made me aware of how easy it is to start to question our own responses if we overanalyze them. By about 9 a.m, I was starting to question how often I was feeling anxious. If I hadn't gone into this already understanding anxiety to the degree that I do, I think I might have been tempted to become concerned about my own anxiety, and that potentially might have then made my anxiety worse. But the point of this whole weird experiment into over-analysis is that when I say it's okay to feel anxious, this is exactly what I mean. Anxiety is the emotion that tells us when something is important enough to demand our attention. If you're going through that process of recovering from high anxiety, then you're going to, like all human beings, feel anxious from day to day. It doesn't mean you're relapsing or that you're broken and unfixable. It just means you're alive and you care. As I've said many times, that's perfectly healthy. And if you're sitting there watching this thinking how much worse your anxiety is, then ask yourself this. If you no longer felt any anxiety at all about how anxious you feel from day to day, how much anxiety would you actually experience? Oftentimes, that high anxiety is simply everyday anxiety amplified by our concern that there's something wrong with that. I'm going to link at the end to another video that I want you to watch where I do a deeper dive into this idea, so check that one out. But tell me, was this video helpful? Does it give you a fresh perspective on anxiety? Or are you as upset as me that I missed the bin men and now have to pile my rubbish on top of an already full dustbin for the next week? Let me know in the comments below, and if you have any questions, put them down there too and I'll do my best to answer them. I really hope this video has been of value. Please hit that thumbs up button if you like what I do, and why not subscribe to the channel for weekly mind management tips and anxiety advice. Remember, I'm also now doing a weekly live Q&A every Friday at 6 p.m. London time, where you can ask me your anxiety-related questions, so please join me for that. Also, the big news is that the members area of the channel is now live. You'll find hours of extra content there and also have access to exclusive live streams with me. Just click the join button at the top of the channel page for full access, and I'll see you there. But that's it for now. I'm Tim Box, Mind Coach. Always remember to be kind to your mind, and I'll see you next time.